In this lecture, I am going to discuss the firewall basics. So firewalls are the entry-level security systems in any networks. And firewalls, basically, those are a hardware or software configured to block the unauthorized network access. That means firewalls will come in two versions, especially either maybe software version or maybe a hardware version. So we should not fix our mind that firewall is only a software. So, but the firewalls will also come in the hardware. Basically this kind of hardware will called as the based-on computer that we'll see afterwards when we are discussing the firewall configuration and management. So firewalls cannot protect against malicious insiders. That means within the network, if anyone is capturing the uh, internal network that is within the network, if any computer within the network want to try to attack the other computer in the other network, then organizational level firewalls, that is at a network level firewalls, cannot detect such malicious insiders. Firewall cannot protect connections that do not go through it. So any network, any traffic that will pass through the firewalls only will be detected by the firewall rules. But the connections like dial-up connections, remote dial-up connections, which are basically circuit switched, okay, will not be detected by the firewalls. So these are the few limitations of the firewalls. Any network firewall is a combination of multiple software and hardware components. It is also called as a firewall perimeter. That means to combine both the hardware and software part, the architecture or the configuration is said to be the firewall perimeter. This is a terminology used in the entire discussion. Earliest firewalls were packet filtered. So that means a single packet filtering router was placed at the perimeter. That means they will mainly focus on the which packet to allow into the network and which packet to be blocked or which packet to be dropped. So this kind of information will be mentioned at the packet filter firewalls. Some firewalls are designed for consumers, such as Norton Security Suite Firewall, Zone Alarm are the very popular firewalls. So, for example, if you look at our university will use Sophos firewall. You might be seeing that Sophos firewall. So this firewall is rated as the top one firewall according to the 2019-20. So that is the reason previously we used to use some other firewalls. Now we are using the Sophos firewall, which is a proprietary firewall. Okay. With personal firewalls, establishing rules for blocking traffic are done by case. So we cannot attach everything to any kind of traffic to one restricted rules or something. But the traffics or the incoming traffic should be dealt by case. That means whether you want to allow the ping actions like ICMP or not, whether you want to allow the situations such as the TCP connections or HTTP connections, etc. So checkpoint NGX firewall is a best example for monitoring the large scale networks, especially like enterprise level firewalls. Firewall appliances, which are basically self-contained hardware devices added to a network. So Cisco PAX is an example for that. Firewalls are not standalone solutions. So we cannot say that a firewall is a mantra for everything. No, it's not like that. Firewalls can only deal with the internal incoming traffic. Okay, and they will totally focus on the packet filtering and which packet to be allowed and which packet to be blocked. So basically, these firewalls cannot detect from the internal threats. Need strong security policy and employee education also, because employees should be aware of what type of traffic or what type of applications need to be browsed and what type of configurations need to be set in their devices. So that is the reason to have a full-fledged security system. The firewalls must be combined with the antivirus softwares and intrusion detection and prevention systems. So one can say firewall is a part of intrusion detection prevention system as a whole. That is, whenever you consider the entire network. that is enterprise level security. That is the reason we have discussed previously the defense in depth. That is a layered defense strategy that includes the IDPS, firewall, antivirus software, and control mechanism. Finally, auditing of the logs. These are the components that will combined and that will combinedly make the system or network secure. If you look at the functionality of the firewalls, the main functionality of the firewalls is like this: filtering, proxying, and logging. Filtering is nothing but, as just now we discussed, which packet to be filtered and which packet to be dropped. Proxying is nothing but, instead of going the traffic directly to the intended server, the first the firewalls will respond to the request, then it will recreate the same request and will send to the original servers and will get the information from that, and that information or that reply will be again recreated and will be sent to the requester. So like that, it will be used as a proxy. Majorly, this proxying will be used for not to know the internal architecture of the organization. That is, what is the subdomains or sub kind of IP addresses that are used in the within the local area network of the organization. To not to disclose such kind of things, this proxying will be used. I hope the students of JIT Sector 128 campus may be knowing this proxying. To access the internet, they need to use the proxy settings. Next one is logging. Logging in the sense that what type of traffic is coming and for what purpose, which application is responding to it, and to which port it is intended to. This kind of information will be logged within the firewalls. So that is what is called logging. So these are the three main functionalities of the firewalls. So in this chapter, we'll see the software-based firewalls and hardware-based firewalls. Software program, that is software-based firewalls, is nothing but the software programs can be combined with the hardware devices to create secure checkpoints. Basically, this require extensive configurations because first of all, the security engineer must understand the hardware configurations. Based on the hardware configurations and the documentation provided for the hardware configurations, the security engineer has to design the firewall rules and need to be incorporated in the firewall software. So free firewall programs can be used, that is open source firewall softwares are available. Like for example, in case of Unix operating system or Linux operating system, IP tables, NetFilter, these are the open source firewalls which are packet level firewalls that can be used. So these free firewall programs are nothing but they are having the logging capabilities, but those are not as robust as some commercial products. Obviously, the open source products are not that much robust, but however, for a small scale and medium scale organizations, they cannot afford the cost of or the budget. That much budget may not be sufficient, but may not be available. Hence, they are going for the open source firewalls and making use of them. So configuration can be difficult, and some popular free firewall programs are like this: NetFilter, Zone Alarm. In case of Linux, the IP tables is the best popular free firewall programs. Commercial firewall programs, which are sometimes are called as some personal firewalls or maybe enterprise firewalls. That means commercial firewalls will come in two modes: either personal firewall or the enterprise firewall. Personal firewall in the sense that can be used with your computer itself, where in case of enterprise firewalls, it can be used for the guarding the entire organizational network. So this personal firewalls located between the Ethernet adapter driver and the TCP/IP stack, which especially will inspect the traffic going between the driver and the stack. The popular choices are like this for the if you want to make your own personal firewall, other than the operating system provided firewalls, then you may use CA Internet Security Suite, Norton Internet Security, Zone Alarm Internet Security Suite, Kaspersky Internet Security. These are the software-based firewalls, especially for the personal settings. But these firewalls do not offer extensive firewall protection, and we may go for the commercial firewalls that got the enterprise level, include centralized management option. That means you no need to set the options for every computer. Instead, you can make a centralized system, and where you can divert the traffic. From there, you can redirect to the internal computers. So include centralized management options. Some are capable of installing multiple instances from a centralized location. That means any updation, patches, etc., can be done centralizedly from this particular settings. Some examples include Checkpoint, NGX. This kind is a very popular enterprise firewall, and some products offer authentication, network address translation, encryption, and centralized management. So that depends upon your requirement and security policies designed at your organization. You are supposed to choose what type of firewall you require, and you need to set up in your system, in your organization. Especially if the organization strength is greater than 100, it is always recommended to go for enterprise firewalls and set the firewall policies. While coming to the hardware firewalls, so far whatever we have discussed are the software firewalls, and hardware firewalls are nothing but a hardware system will be placed, and from the hardware system the server will be connected. That hardware system consisting of the internal rules and all. So the main advantage is that is no way related to the ongoing operating system at the server. So that do not depend upon the conventional operating systems. But basically, in the server systems, you will use server operating systems like a Windows 2016 server or Windows 2008 server or any other Linux servers or Red Hat server, etc. The server operating systems will be especially used. But these hardware firewalls will not depend upon any the conventional operating systems. So they are completely independent. But how these hardware firewalls will work? That means these hardware firewalls internally having their own operating system. Okay, that means here the security engineer will be having an additional button that how these internal operating system and configurations will work. Generally, more scalable than the software firewalls, can handle more data with a faster throughput. This is a very very important thing for the firewall to be judged. That means, uh, for example, you may be having a network interface card of 100 Mbps speed or maybe 1 gigabit speed. But if you look at the organizational level, the traffic is not that much 1 GB or something. The 1 GB is very, very small. So if you look at the organizational level, the traffic will be in terabytes sometimes. So when the traffic is flowing in terabytes, multiples of terabytes, then how efficient your firewall to detect the wrong traffic or malicious traffic? That is what the efficiency of the firewall to be judged. So the hardware firewalls is especially designed for that purpose to handle at least 10 terabytes traffic or 100 terabytes traffic or 1000 terabytes traffic. So such a huge traffic can be handled with the hardware, but this cannot be done with the help of the normal firewalls. That is what the advantage of hardware firewalls. That Especially like for example electronic commerce servers, e-commerce servers. So during the festival season or during the some offer period, a huge traffic will come into the network to the servers. So this kind of thing can be judged only or can be handled only with the help of hardware firewalls. But basically, these hardware firewalls are too costly and can only be afforded by the renowned companies or renowned organizations. Disadvantage of these hardware firewalls are like this. They do not depend upon non-conventional operating systems. They do depend on the non-conventional operating systems. That is, in the sense, internally in the hardware itself, they will be having an operating system. Tend to be more expensive than the software products. Just now, as I told you, they are very costly to afford. So these are the disadvantage of the hardware firewalls. To give you an idea of how the hardware firewalls is, recall your broadband router at your home. The broadband router is a kind of hardware. But how you will manage this broadband router? But you are supposed to connect this broadband router to your computer. From there, you will open the web browser. From there, you will use the localhost the HTTP colon slash slash 192.168.1.1 or something. Then you will connect to the router. From there you will go for configuring of the router. So this is the way you will do it. In the same way here also the hardware firewalls will be placed that will be connected to the server. From the server you will open. There will be there will be a software that need to be installed to connect to the hardware firewall, and you can make the configurations. So I hope you might have got the idea of how the hardware firewalls will be used with the servers. The example of hardware firewalls are like this: Cisco ASA series, Fortnite 40 gate series, and NG firewall. These are the famous hardware firewalls. So Cisco ASA series is a very famous series of hardware firewalls that will be adopted by that will be used widely by the enterprises. So to summarize these software firewalls and hardware firewalls, software-free firewalls are like this: a small file size, ease of installation is good, and working of disadvantages are like this: only minimal features are offered. Software commercial firewalls, simple to install, economical, auto configuration feature helps novice users to give advanced users for more fine-tuned control, but not all full-featured as enterprise products. While coming to the software commercial products, usually installed on a dedicated host for maximum security, especially that is in the sense we can say these are the centralized administration available for them. And the disadvantage of this are can be difficult to install and configure, tend to more expensive. While coming to the hardware configuration or hardware appliances, more scalable than the software firewalls, and can be expensive in the case of cost to afford. That is what the firewall settings that is going to be used, especially in general in any organization. Now, what are the topics we are going to see in our lectures in this course are especially the packet filtering firewalls. So whatever the configuration that I will explain with respect to the IP tables are for the Windows firewall are the packet filter firewalls only. We are not focusing on the hardware firewalls in this course. However, I will provide you simulators. Then you can work on those simulators to know or to have understanding of how the hardware firewalls and in general the packet filtering firewalls rules can be set. The packet filtering firewalls and firewall rule sets are like this: stateless packet filtering, stateful packet filtering. Packet filtering depends upon the position of the component. So that means here stateless, stateful, and packet filtering depending upon position of the component. In these two, majorly the stateless and stateful packet filtering are the two major categories in firewalls. In this, we'll see what is the stateless and stateful packet filtering. At the same time, packet filtering will be depending upon where you have placed this firewall. Okay, so you might have placed a firewall at the entrance of the network, and you want to deal with the traffic which is coming into the local area networks. So that will not work. So you have to place a firewall just before the local area network. Then only you have to set the configurations properly and security rules properly. Then only you can filter the packets which are coming into the internal network. So that means the packet filtering is also depending upon the position of the position of the firewall where you place in the entire network architecture. That is the reason it is also said to be that the position of the firewall or position of the firewall and the policy of the firewall that you set is equally important for guarding the network. So not only simply installing the firewall, but where you use in the entire network is also equally important. So stateless packet filtering determines whether to allow or block the packets based on the information in the protocol header. So based upon the protocol header, like we have seen the ARP headers, TCP headers, UDP headers, IP header, ICMP header. So based upon the information available in the headers, the packet to be allowed into the computer or not, or to be blocked, will be decided. So what are the features in the, or what are the fields in the IP headers will be looked at. For example, in case of IP header, the features such as IP address, port, and TCP flags will be checked. If it is a synchronous packet, then it will allow. If it is a FIN packet, still it will allow. If it is a RST packet, it will allow, like that. So depend upon the packet type or packet signal type that you will use in the TCP flags, the packet filtering will be taken place. Intruders can get around these defenses. Advantage is inexpensive, so it is very cheap to implement. But the disadvantage is like this: hard to maintain, sometimes vulnerable to the IP spoofing, and no form of authentication is provided in this case of stateless packet filtering. So the stateless packet filtering, stateless, the name is telling you that stateless means it won't concern about what type of connectivity with whether the connectivity exists with your computer or not. But still, it will take care of the packet which is coming into the network. That is what we call stateless packet filtering. The example is like this. Always the firewall rules will be configured in a matrix form like this. The rule number, the IP source IP address, source port, destination IP address, destination port, action, whether to allow or deny or drop. So these are the three actions in general will be taken place. So here rule one will be like this: any IP address. So any packet from any IP address from any port, the destination IP address is this local IP address that you can mention here, and any destination port. The any destination port above 1023 is going to be allowed. That means any packet coming from any IP address, any port number, coming into the organizational network to the local host, to the internal network with the IP address 192.168.120.0 and to any port greater than 1023 is allowed. So this is the way rules will be set. So you can go through this table and you can find how the rules are going to be set. Many software firewalls sometimes will provide you the management console. In that management console, directly you can write the entries like this. Where in case of some firewalls like IP tables don't have the management console, you are supposed to write everything on the command prompt to allow or deny the particular packet. So this is the way the stateless packet filtering rules will be set. While coming to the stateful packet filtering, in this, the main difference between the stateless and stateful is nothing but the packets which are coming into the network will be allowed by the firewall only to the services where the connection was already established. This is what the difference. The connection is already established. Only the packets which are related to the connections which are already established with the computer will be allowed. That is what is stateful. Here, the state information will be maintained. Whether the state of the receiving packet, that is computer from where the packet is received, is already connected with the computer or not. That is like you recall the TCP three-way handshake, in which a synchronous signal will be sent, synchronous acknowledgement, and acknowledgement to the synchronous acknowledgement. Then only the connection is established. That kind of connection information will be maintained. Only the packets will be filtered which are already connected. Okay. So keeps a record of connections a host computer has made with other computers. Maintain a file called state table containing the record of all current connections. Allow the incoming connection packets to pass through only from the external hosts already connected. Okay, this is very important. Where in case of stateless, it won't concern about whether the connection is already established or not. It will keep track of every packet which is coming into the network. But in case of stateful, only the packet filtering will take place from the computers or from the IP addresses with which already the connection is established. The example is like this. Same here also serial number will be there, rule number will be there, source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, connection status established. If the connection status is established, then only the packet filtering takes place. Otherwise, packet filtering will not be taken into consideration. What will happen to the packets which are coming from non-established connections? If the connection is for the establishment of the connection, then it will allow. Okay. For example, synchronous signal has come, then it will allow. Okay. Synchronous acknowledgement has sent. Acknowledgement of the synchronous acknowledgement was received, then it will allow. Then connection will be established, then established. If any other signal other than this, like ICMP signals, pinging of the command, these kind of things will not be allowed sometimes. Okay, only the connection which is related and established will be allowed into the system. Stateful packet filtering, the Windows Firewall. The Windows Firewall is the best example, one of the most user-friendly packet filters can limit the type of program traffic with more precision, can even specify the exceptions also. That means, okay, you allow the packets from these connections. At the same time, you may exclude the packets from these IP addresses. Like that also, you can make the exceptions. Advanced tab allow the more complex settings, can create a very specific rules to allow or deny the packets based upon the protocols, ports, IP addresses, and other items. That I will provide you a video for this afterwards. How to set this packet filtering in the Windows operating system. You may go through that. The example is like this. The Windows firewall will look like this. You can go to the control panel. There you can go to the Windows firewall. So thereby you can get the screen like this. This is with respect to the Windows 7. And there in which you can set the configuration rules like this. It is just like a matrix. You look at here the name of the services, and here the users, whether the domain and home network, public network. So you are going to make a checkbox of the access control here. Based on this access control set here, the rest of the traffic, which is from there onwards, whatever the traffic coming into the computer will be placed here, will be allowed or will be discarded. The decision will be made based upon this access control. Next is packet filtering based on the position. So far we have seen the stateless and stateful packet filtering. Now packet filtering based on the position. And where you place the firewall, based on that the firewall configurations or can say the policy working will be done. So type of filtering a device can do depending upon the position of the device in the firewall perimeter, other hardware or software. Packet filter placement between the internet and host. Okay. Between a proxy server and the internet. So the packet filter placement will be like this: between the internet and host, between a proxy server and internet. As just I told you, the proxy server is nothing but which will, for example, a user wants to communicate with a web server. He cannot directly go and connect with the web server. Instead, there is a proxy server will be placed. Especially this proxy server will be helpful for not to divert entire traffic to the web server. Instead, in middle, the proxy server will attend this traffic, and if based upon the rules that you set in the proxy server, it will judge that whether the traffic is genuine to enter into the real web server or not, and that particular traffic will be sent to the web server. If it is not a genuine one, then it may be dropped, or based upon the configurations rule that you set in the proxy, it will allow. So packet filter placements between the internet and a host. Okay, that is all inbound and outbound traffic should be accounted for this packet filter rule based, and between the proxy server and the internet. So the proxy server handles the traffic on behalf of computers. On the network, it protects. Rebuilds request to hide internal IP address information. That means from outside any request has come, then this request will be rebuilt and will be sent to the original web server. And from whatever the reply will come from the original server will be rebuilt and will be sent back to the requester. This is the work of the proxy server. So it is just like from the internet, the packet filter route traffic between the internet and proxy server, and here the proxy server will be there. From there again to the local network. This is the way it will be created. Packet filter based upon position. Here the packet filter placement will be like this. Either you may also set before the proxy server, that is especially to safeguard the proxy server, or if you want to safeguard the local area network from this, one more packet filter may be placed after the proxy server. Okay, so this is the way you can set it. And also there is another layer that you can add, which is called a demilitarized zone. Place the packet filter devices at either end of the demilitarized zone. Filters on demilitarized zone will be connected with the external interfaces. Need to allow the internet users to gain access to the servers on the DMZ, but block access to the internal network. Filter on DMZ internal interfaces enable the internal users to access the servers on the DMZ but not connected to the internet. That means depending upon the position that you place. Internal users connect to the internet through a proxy server on DMZ. For example, DMZ is nothing but demilitarized zone where you will place the publicly accessible devices, for the outsiders. So, for example, web server, proxy servers, and all these are the publicly accessible resources. That means anyone from the internet, if they type http:// the website name, automatically the request will resolve via DNS and will come to your web server. So that is the public resource. You cannot stop them to access your resources. So such resources are said to be public resources. Those public resources will be placed in the DMZ. So as I told you just now, before the proxy server, you can place the packet filter at the before and after also. Like that, it is always recommended to place a firewall before the DMZ and also after the DMZ. So the DMZ, this particular first firewall is said to be the outer firewall, and the second firewall is said to be the internal firewall. Internal firewall will take the safeguard the traffic which is flowing between the DMZ and internal things, and external firewalls will totally safeguard the traffic which is coming from the internet to the DMZ. So this is the way the layered technology or layered defense can be made to strengthen the security of the organization. Firewall rule set, how to set the firewall rules. And one thing is the firewall rules will be set based upon the organizational security policy. That is very, very important to understand. And many of the rules will be set in the matrix format, as we have seen previously. This rule base will tell the firewall what to do when a certain kind of traffic attempts to pass through the system or pass through the network. So this will be done especially in the matrix format, as we have seen previously in a simple example in stateless and stateful firewall settings. So effective firewall rules base should be like this, based on the organization security policy. Every organization will be having a security policy. Especially the security engineers, security administrators will design the security policy in coordination with the top management of the organization. And these security policies are very confidential, and you will not get the security policy document always. Okay, like you may get the annual reports in public, or you may get any other thing related to the companies or organizations in public, but security policies will not be made public. Security policies are only internal to the organization. If the security policies are known, then attackers can easily identify based upon the security policy what they have set. They can try for different alternatives and can find the vulnerabilities, and they can go through that. And one more thing is leaking of the security policy is also a big crime. So you must be very careful in dealing with the security policies always when you are working as a security engineer in any organization. So it is always based upon the organization security policy, includes a firewall policy. This firewall policy will be designed based upon the security policy of the organization. Be simple and short as possible. So don't make complex arrangements. Always be simple. Always write the rules as simple as possible. And if you want to make any complex thing, first you write the simple rules. Then based upon the simple rules, you may design another rule which may make it complex. Like that, you are supposed to do it. Restrict access to ports and subnets on the internal network from the internet. Control internet services. These are the main goals of the effective rule formation of the firewalls. When based on your computer policy will be like this. When configuring rules, pay attention to logging and auditing, tracking, filtering, network address translation, quality of service, and desktop security policy. These are the 6 main things that you need to be checked with respect to this firewall rule configuration. Rule base is a practical implementation of the organizational policy. As I told you, the organizational security policy, which is a confidential thing in any organization, these rule settings will be based upon this. And in this also, some of the security policies must be educated to the employees that what type of services they can utilize from the local area network or within the organization, and what type of devices should not be allowed, So these kind of things are said to be the policies that need to be educated by to the employees of the organization. Otherwise, these security policies are set only for majorly for the safeguarding the organizational assets, including the employee devices and employee credentials. So that is the reason educating the employees with respect to these security policies is also equally important. Common guidelines that need to be reflected in the rule base are like this. Employees have access to the internet with restrictions. So you can see here, this is a very important thing that I just now told you. Educating employees regarding what type of restrictions are they have kept on the internet. For example, in some organizations, some grade employees can access the e-commerce site. Some grade employees cannot access the e-commerce sites. So these kind of security policies with restrictions they might have adopted. So public can access companies, web and email servers. Only authenticated traffic can access the internal LAN. Employees are not allowed to use instant messaging or social networking outside the internal network. Traffic from companies' ISP, Internet Service Provider, should be allowed. Block external traffic by instant messaging software. Only network administrator should be able to access the internal network directly from the internet. So that means I want to access a mail server or I want to access a mail server, or I want to access a file server in an organization. So if you are a part of the organization and if you are accessing from within the organization network, you may access the file server. But from outside, from the outside of the organization network, that is from via internet, I want to access. Then normal employees cannot access that. Only the network administrator should be able to access the internal network directly from the internet. So these are the various security policies, in most commonly used guidelines for framing the security policies that you must understand. Firewall policy, addition to security policy that describe how firewall should be handled and handle the application traffic. Especially, the risk assessment provides a list of applications and associated threats and vulnerabilities. General step to create firewall policies like this. First, identify the network applications that are needed. So you mainly focus on the what are the main services of your application, main services of your organization. That means what are the main services that are running, like a web server or FTP server or maybe mail server, or what are the services that are running. Next, determine methods for securing application traffic. Must balance security, user requirements, and cost. Consider all firewalls in your network. Develop a traffic matrix for each location. So these are the three guidelines that you are supposed to follow. Here is the example which is showing application traffic matrix that need to be designed. So here the first one is the services, that is the application that need to be accessed. Internal host type, location, host security policy, firewall internal security policy, firewall external security policy. That means this application FTP is there. Internal host type is Windows, and location is any location. You can place it at any location. Host security policy is client only, which is antivirus, and that is at the host level you will place an antivirus and you will try to detect it. And firewall internal security policy is allowed, and firewall external security policy is denied. That means you are going to allow this FTP access via Windows, but via external, that is outside of the network, you are not allowing this FTP service to be utilized. Next is when in case of internal host is in Unix and location is any, and host security policy is via secure socket shell SSH, and for which user ID and password, no anonymous traffic will be allowed. So here the firewall internal policy, internally you can use this SSH, internally you can access this FTP when you are using the Unix or Windows, but firewall external security policy, application proxy with user authentication. That means you use the SSH command from the outside of the network and will connect to the FTP server via the user ID password provided. That is what is called application proxy with user authentication. Like that, you are supposed to frame the security policy, and these policies need to be incorporated in the firewall settings. Then the firewall to be placed at the corresponding location, so that that location that firewall will safeguard the traffic which is coming into the network. So this is the application traffic matrix that need to be adopted. So creating the application firewall policy for the application traffic, firewalls enable you to control the access to it. So what are the different options you can mention here is like allowing of the traffic, blocking, and ask for prompt. Okay. In case of Unix, especially in case of IP tables, accept, reject, and drop. These three are there. That we'll see whenever I'm discussing this IP tables. In general, allow, block, and ask for prompt. User is prompted when application attempts to access the internet. Then there will be a message will pop up, and will be asked whether you want to allow this application to enter into the system or not, to access the system or not. And one more thing is these are the guidelines that you are supposed to understand here. Keep list of rules as short as possible. That is about 30 rules. Don't give more than 50 rules. Because if the traffic is very fast, then firewall cannot detect the malicious or the traffic which is violating the policy if you have more than 50 rules. In case of the small level firewalls or small softwares, shorter the rule base, faster the firewall will perform. Firewalls process rules in a particular order. Usually, the rules are numbered sequentially and displayed in a grid. Most important rules should be at the top of the list. Make the list rules a cleanup rule. Handle any other packet that have not been covered in the preceding rules will be covered in that rule. Like it is just like if-else block. If these are the traffic, then do this. Otherwise, do some other thing like that. You may mention this. So filtering by IP addresses, you can that means within the organization you may use some different subnets. We have seen the IP subnetting. We can use different subnets for different sections that are used that are available in the organization. So restricting the subnets, ports, and protocols can be done like this. Filtering by IP addresses. You can identify traffic by IP address range, and most firewalls will start blocking all traffic. So that is the reason you mention which subnet traffic need to be allowed and which subnet traffic can be restricted. So this is the example of zone alarm image, graphical user interface, where you can place which range to which range. Like 172.20.0.1, we all know that 172, 192, and 10 series will be used for the internal network, that is local area network, that is for the private networks. So here 172 class B network is used. 170.20.0.0.1 to 170.20.2.254. That means here it is covering different subnets. That these are the trusted subnets, so you allow any traffic into it. And restricting the port level, filtering by the ports, TCP and UDP break information into sections called segments and datagrams. Filter the traffic based upon TCP and UDP port numbers. Can filter a wide variety of information. Like in case of TCP, port 80 is for the web traffic, 25 is for the SMTP server, that is email traffic, and TCP port 21 is for the FTP transmission. Combination of IP addresses and port numbers is also called a socket, and you may also give this socket information to filter the traffic via policies. So this is a simple example, a demonstration of the thing, like which port and which socket need to be allowed and which socket need to be filtered within the DMZ. Because the web server may be having an IP address, and the email server is having an IP address, and FTP may be having an IP address. So you may provide a particular IP address and the corresponding port number. Only that traffic will be allowed into the DMZ. This is at the outer firewall. And after this DMZ, you may also place a packet filter over here, which is also called as internal firewall. And from this, you may also set a rule that which traffic from this again to be allowed internally. This is an example here. The rules and protocol, source IP, source port, destination IP, and destination port, action, and what is the service to be accessed. So in case of 135, NetBIOS, okay, network basic input output system, RPC will be used. 137, NetBIOS name service. 139, NetBIOS session service. So 445, SMB or file sharing service. So majorly the attackers will look for the 445, there is SMB and file service vulnerabilities. That is the reason this is also a very important thing to be included, because mainly the file sharing and file capturing on the file system of the internal network will be identified with the vulnerabilities that I have found via 445 or SMB. Then SMB will be exploited to gain the file system. So that is the reason this rule is also included here. And 1755 is for the Windows Media, and 3389 is for the remote desktop protocol. Like that, every protocol will be having, or every service will be having the corresponding dedicated port to be used. So you may use such rules in this to avoid the malicious activity. And here also Unix has its own set of services. So you may use the Unix services like this. Here, this is with respect to the Windows service, it was mentioned here. And here the Unix services like port mapper and remote login, syslog, this kind of things was mentioned in this table. And filtering by services, firewalls can filter by name of service. You can also, especially the Windows is very friendly to write the policies like this. You can directly give the service name, and you can you can give the corresponding port number, and just by with the service name itself, you can identify and set the policies. Packets can be filtered based upon the ID field. So whatever the service name you will write, for that ID will be assigned internally. So ID field in the IP packet header. And firewalls can also filter by 6 TCP control flags, that is synchronous, acknowledgement, reset, finish. Okay, so these are the various 6 control flags are there. With that also you can filter the traffic. Firewalls can also filter the IP options, security, loose resource and recording route, like a strict source and recording route, and internet timestamp, which is available in the ICMP protocol, recording the route, source quench, and these kind of things will also be can also be filtered by the firewalls. And filtering by services, IPv6 contains many messages and responses, like neighbor discovery, root discovery. This kind of thing can also be filtered with the help of firewalls. This information should be prevented from leaving the internal network, but must pass through the internal firewalls. And filtering by services, a rule should follow a few general practices: deny all, accept all, accept some specific things. These are the 3 things you must consider for setting the firewall rules. This is an example with which you can, this is a simple example, like a rule, source IP, port, destination port, action, and what it does: prevents firewall from making any connection. Okay, like that, what would be done by the firewall if if it want to allow the internal users to access the external computers? So this is the rule to be set. And if anyone wants to access the DNS service, so how to set it? If anyone want to access the SMTP service, what to do? So this is the way you are supposed to set the policy matrix, and you need to configure in the outer firewall where you place, that is the position of the firewall, whether it is outer or internal, that is before DMZ or after DMZ, before proxy or after proxy. So where you place, based upon that, you need to set these rules and need to configure the firewalls. The firewalls can also be used for controlling the internet services, like the general services of internet, like HTTP inbound services and HTTP outbound services, and corresponding HTTP port numbers like 80 and 440 whenever you use HTTP, that is HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol with security, like SSL or something. Okay, outbound services that can also be dealt with these firewalls. Not only this one, you can also set the DNS rules, like DNS resolutions, like using of the 53 port, and resolve fully qualified domain name services. How to resolve that, whether such traffic can be allowed or not, that can also be set here. Next one is email configurations. Setting up the firewall rules for permitting the filtering of emails is not simple. So variety of email protocols can be used here, like post office protocol, SMTP, simple mail transfer protocol, and lightweight directory access protocol, and HTTP services. So these are the 4 things that can be configured with this for configuring the email configurations. And along with this one thing going to be configured is the secure socket layer. So So here is a table that will show you the configuration of the email, like a pop outbound, and pop inbound, pop outbound. So these are the ways you can set like protocol name, transfer protocol, source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and the action, whether allow or deny. So this is the way you can set it. Next, you can also say the other. You can also set for the FTP transactions, like file transfer protocol, types of FTP transactions like active FTP and passive FTP. In case of active FTP, if supported by some clients in your network, you cannot specify a port because the client has already established a connection with the FTP server at any port above 1023. Instead, specify IP address of your FTP server, and you may write a policy in the firewall to allow the traffic or to deny the traffic. So here is a table example that will give you the information about the FTP. And one more thing is at the network layer, along with IP, we have ICMP. Based upon the ICMP message type, also you can filter the firewall, like ICMP v4 version 4 and ICMP v4, which is used along with the IPv6, functions as a house coping protocol for the TCP/IP, helps network cope with the communication problems. So ICMP version 4 packet have no authentication method. Attacker can use the ICMP packet to attempt to manage the middle attack. That already we have discussed this concept in the ICMP attacks. So you may recall that concept. So firewall or packet filter must be able to determine whether an IP packet should be allowed to pass or based upon the message type. So here is an example whether internally whether this ICMP to be allowed or externally from external request ICMP is allowed or not. That is a ping from the outside is allowed or not, whether from the inside is allowed or not. That need to be placed in this rules. This is especially based upon the ICMP packet type, like ICMP v6 message type to pass to the firewall, but never outside the organization, like a destination unreachable, packet too big, time exceeded, so echo request, echo response. So based upon these codes, especially, you may design the firewall rules. In summary, firewall is a hardware or software that blocks unauthorized network access. Firewalls are not standalone solutions. They must be used along with antivirus software, IDPSs, access control, and auditing to make a full length security, that is especially layered security, or you can say defense in depth to strengthen the security of the network. Software firewalls come as freeware, shareware, and commercial enterprise applications. Hardware firewalls appliances are more expensive but can handle more traffic. Stateless firewalls filter traffic based upon the protocol or IP addresses, but less secure than the stateful firewalls. Stateful firewalls will maintain the state table information, which are recording of the connections that are already considered trusted. Firewalls are effective only if they are configured correctly to block undesirable traffic and allow the necessary traffic. How we will do this is based upon the organization security policy. That is what the next point is. Firewall rule base should be based on the organization security policy. Provide user rules for how applications can access the internet and be as simple as short as possible. So this is what the firewall basics. We'll see the firewall configuration and management in the next lecture.